Welcome back, guys. This is the final game for Cinco de Wingo DOS. Round 5, I drew... I think we're playing basically a Spanish team. I'm pretty sure their captain was saying that they were all at the ETC this year. So, should be a good test. I drew up Ivan's Demon Legions. He's a guy that I knew him when he was in Sydney and sort of like online have been slightly in touch with him over the years, so know him a bit. And he was really keen to play me. So what we actually did in pairings was we just took ourselves out and then did a 4-man pairing so that we could play each other. He suggested that, and out of my team, I think no one other than maybe a Sylvan Elf player wanted to play his list. So I was like, well, that's actually pretty good because everyone else doesn't want to play you and I'm happy playing you. I don't particularly like the rest of the list. So it worked out well for me. In terms of what he brought, it's quite different to the first Demons list that I played in the tournament because that one was basically like 3 big units and 2 Greta Demons. This one has no Greta Demons. It's got 2 Harbingers of Father Chaos. One's the BSB. They're both Wizard Adepts. They both have a Breath Weapon, and one of them's using Thalma, one of them's using Evok. He's got a big block of Succubi with Chilling Yawn, so I think that's -2 agility, which I don't think affects me at all, because I think they're agility 5 base. If they're agility 4, even if they didn't have that, at best across my army, I'd only be hitting at the same time as him, so wasn't too concerned about that. He's got 2 units of Imps with Mark of the Eternal Champion, so they're both able to cast the Demon's Hereditary in the magic phase. He's got 2 Threshing Engines, one that's advanced 12 against anything with a magic item, and the other that has a 6-inch Vanguard. He has 3 units of Bloatflies, one of them of 6 and 2 of them of 3, and the units of 3 would reroll to wound against like large and gigantic, I think, so basically everything important in my army. He's got a unit of 8 Eidolons with Aura of Despair, so harder to charge them, and a champion, so they've got Wizard Conclave. I think all their spells are damage spells, but basically they've got access to Fate's Judgment, which is the D6 auto wound, no special save spell from Divination, which is horrible for Gortax. It's not very good for Giants either, but Gortax are more valuable, so he was definitely going to take that, basically, and they would be a problem I'd need to figure out a way to solve, because I think if I let them run about for 6 turns without at least doing some damage with magic or something, they're going to take a lot of points off me. And then basically he's got a unit of Sirens who are sort of chaff/support when needed. Let's get started. No, not happening. Let's get started. There we go. So this is after some of my... It might not be after all of my first turn movements. No, it looks like it is. So basically we had diagonal deployment. Ivan won and chose the bottom left. So I dropped everything to go first, with 2 Giants up the top, 2 Gorgons down the bottom, and then everything else central. Basically the idea was that the Giants would have the house was deeper in his deployment zone, so with their move and their Vanguard, they'd be able to get into a bit of a more annoying spot than the Gortax would, I think. But if there was no opportunity up there, they could always just sort of pull back and guard that flank against anything he puts there. The objective was Spoils of War, so those are the 3 green stars you can see across the diagonal of the board. It's not Ivan's list isn't very good at scoring, but neither's mine. So I didn't really see many ways that I was going to win that, because one ambusher, if I control one flank, and I was aiming to do that with the bottom, one ambusher can take one, but I don't really have a way that my Wildhorns can get the middle one, and I don't have enough strength compared to his army to control both of my flanks, so I couldn't really get 2 of them unless I really sort of crushed his army, I guess. So my general plan was, if I could, and as I've sort of done here with at least 1 Giant, I would have had to keep him out of line of sight. Maybe that is out of line of sight. It doesn't look like it. Oh no, yeah. So he's safe there because the bloatflies can't land and the sirens can't charge anything because nothing's in range. I did pull back one of those giants, as I said, because there wasn't a great spot for him to sit. But what I'm sort of hoping to do is with my giants vaguely threatening that side, and with my I'll take one unit of ambushes definitely to try and take the bottom right objective, but the other one might be able to threaten those imps, and if I can stop them from getting that objective, it means that one, I can win it if I zone him away from the middle one, but otherwise he does need to sort of divert resources to deal with the top, and it's a little bit harder for him to get around me while I zone the middle. Because realistically, I don't think anything in his army wants to fight my Chariot characters. Particularly because my Beast Lord has Eye of Dominance. Everything other than I think the riders of the Sirens and the riders on the Threshing Engines hit my Beast Lord on 6s, and the Shaman's really hard to wound because of his reroll wounds and scarification, so I was in a pretty good spot with them. I just needed to be wary of getting sort of like combo charged by things in like the flank when I can't get enough combat res, and potentially breaking on that, but I didn't expect to basically be losing enough wounds to be breaking there. The reason for the Gortax down the bottom was basically because of that impassable terrain. I was able to, because I don't know how he's going to set up. Depending on what he puts down there, I can at least use that to, similar to how I did in the first game, go like, all right, well, you can charge, but only one's going to contact me, while I take that space so that my ambushes can get onto the objective down there and pick it up and run away. In terms of my first turn moves, like as I said, sort of one giant is just trying to be a pest up there. The other one's pulling back to the flank. As I said, my chaff's sort of being cagey. My Wildhorns don't really want to press up because most things in the army beat them. And my Chariots, as I said, were sort of trying to protect things from getting all around them while zoning that middle. I pushed up kind of aggressively with the Gortax. I think that was roughly as far as they could go. And the idea that I had basically was the fact that the Eilidons down there are out of range of his BSB. They're leadership 7, and I've got Savage Fury. So I put the Gortak, sort of the roughly more left one, I put him in range of 7 plus their advance, and then I was hoping to get off Savage Fury, expecting that Ivan wouldn't think about that, and then if they do fail that charge, which I'm pretty sure maximize leadership 7 you should, it's going to deal with a problem that I have very early on in the game. And yeah, so basically I got the lowest flux card. I tried to draw out his dice by casting Break the Spirit on his Chariot. There weren't that many good spells for me in this this turn, so I probably should have just thrown 4 dice at Savage Fury. But I was trying to draw out his dice, and then I rolled a 16 or something, so he was obviously going to let it through when he only had 4 dice. But then you can actually see the rolls on the left there. I rolled a 12 for Savage Fury on those guys, and he only rolled 6. So, yeah, that was basically a very good success for my first Magic phase, because that was what I was playing for, and it managed to go through in the Magic phase. And I think you'll see in the next slide, yeah, the Eidolons did fail their charge and went into the Gortak. This is after his turn 1, sorry. So his Eidolons actually did 2 wounds to my Gortak, which isn't actually, it's not actually that unlikely, given that, he's fairly easy to hit, and even if you've only got 8 or 9 attacks, when you're winning on 6s, it's not that hard to roll a little bit high and get 2 or 3. But I was almost certain I wasn't going to die, and I can get those wounds back, so it wasn't too much of a concern. Otherwise, yeah, he's just sort of seeing what I'm trying to do with that giant and stepping his bloatflies over there to stop me from doing it, and positioning his imps to get some shots, use their magic on him. The 2 wounds on the giant in the north came from the hereditary from one of those imps. Other than that, yeah, I think he's just sort of trying to vaguely surround and threaten from multiple angles with like the bloatflies and the chariots. so that he was presumably trying to push up onto that objective with his succubi. This is my turn 2. Unfortunately, the other core attack failed his frenzy check, and had to charge the Eidolon, so it sort of delayed me my desires to be aggressive with him early on. I just moved my giant away from the bloatflies who were threatening him because he can't fight them, and sort of getting around to fight the imps was probably the next best idea. He's probably going to be able to jump, and he will actually, in his next turn, jump the bloatflies over the other side of the building, but he left me that spot with the other giant to then get around. And realistically, all I'm trying to do up there is knowing I can get the objective in the bottom right, thinking I can zone him out from the middle. My hope was that those giants basically clog him up enough. My ambushes probably get to charge one of his imps, and then if I can just deal with the other one with like one giant, it means that I'll probably win objective, basically. I'm not actually sure if that was a great plan, because I'm just sort of taking chip damage while I dart back and forth, but we'll see how it pans out. But I don't know if it was the best idea, and I was being a little bit too cagey with my chariots in the center, because I was worried about, like, if I push up and go into, like, he can sort of get around me, and I go into something and probably don't break it, unless it's like one of the chariots, but they've got move 10s, they're going to move backwards and then still be easily within charge range. I was worried about the significance of his magic on my chariot unit, but realistically, unless I get, like, a few things would have to go wrong in terms of, like, I'd have to get a bad magic phase, and then I'd probably have to fluff my attacks, because I can cop him going -1 toughness from Evoc, -1 toughness, or strength is worse, but just toughness or strength on the chariots. All I need to really stop is rerolls to wound, because breath weapon isn't that incredible either if I've got spells up particularly, and because everything hits my beast lord on 6s. If he's got like flank threats and stuff, I just bring the druid down into the front rank as a combat reform after I charge, and then whatever's I'm more scared of, like if it's a bloatflies on the top, I just chuck my beast lord up there and go like, that's fine, you can charge my beast lord and get a couple of hits, maybe a wound that I'll bring back. So I think I was probably more worried than I should be with them. My Wildhorns are just basically knowing they can't fight anything, so pissing off to the north. And I think my dogs were kind of just in the way where they were. So I put them there, hopefully allowing me to either, he'd have to charge something and I'd be able to charge with my chariots, or I'll just keep chaffing him next turn. So I was sort of like, I've blocked either like the bloatflies or the threshing engine a bit. You have to charge me, I'll get a counter. That's pretty good. But what I didn't see is what he's going to do, which hopefully is in the next picture. He'll end up charging the sirens, because they looked really far away to me, but I think it was only a 10 or something that he needed. This is in my magic phase, and after my combat, so the Gortax killed the Eidolons. I healed the wound back and got regen up on... I wonder why I put regen on him. Must have been worried about something. I don't know. But I did basically set it up so that those bloatflies in the bottom couldn't charge either of them, because neither of them could land. And I did 4 wounds with a Master of Earth on his bottom chariot. This is after his turn. You can see those sirens have killed my dogs and just sort of stayed where they are. He managed to do, it looks like, 3 more wounds to my giant on the left and 2 to the one on the top, which... I don't know, I can't remember what... This might have been sort of the turn when I was like, this magic is actually really annoying with how much damage you can pull out, even though you don't have the Eidolons. Because I can't imagine what else I would have really wanted to stop, other than those hereditary spells at them. Maybe I stopped the breath weapon on something and then just didn't have the dice to stop the other things. Next, I think we'll be seeing that I made a bit of a mistake got a bit unlucky, I guess, because basically those imps that are further down near the ruins, I'm going to charge them with my Wildhorns and take them off. But I charged the gargoyles at the sirens first, because knowing that I wasn't going to engage with anything else, I was like, I can actually buff them and win that combat. But he fled with the sirens, which popped him into a spot, which meant that my Wildhorns couldn't complete the charge and he couldn't swing to me. So it wouldn't have, like, so one, I didn't really need to charge the sirens, particularly because with the position I can put my giant in and with the stuff back there, he would have had a really hard time stopping my giant from fighting those imps in the next turn. Whereas when he gets chaff back there that has faint flight, it's less of an issue because he can just move the chariot out of the way. He actually gets to reform them before other things move, so he gets to reform, move the chariot out of the way, draw the imps back, and then bring the sirens around. And if I'd done it in the other order, it also wouldn't have been a problem because then it would have been blocked path. So even though they're in the way, I would have been able to go forward, and he would have had to reform to me. I think blocked path is one of those things that every time you think it's actually the case, it's not the case. We had to check it in this one, and it was saying, I think the starter was like, if a unit cannot declare a charge against units it normally could or something. And I was like, well, I've already declared the charge because I declared them first, so it doesn't apply. But at worst, I would have at least been able to shoot at the imps again or do something rather than just sort of charge forward into nothing and stop. Yeah, other than that, I was taking more wounds on my giants than I wanted. But where they were, I was like, now I just need to get those imps. And even if I lose both the giants, I'm actually happy with how this has turned out. I think this was too conservative, basically. So as you can see, I've drawn my Gore-Tax back to the hill in case he pushes forward to try and get that objective. But I think I should have just, particularly with where the units are at the moment, moved everything up and gone, you can't buff everything. So, even fully buffed, I don't know that Bloatflies should kill a Gore-Tax when they've only got 6 attacks. They do have the Toxics. But I think I get 1 spell on the Gore-Tax and I should be able to beat those Bloatflies even though they've got rerolls to wound against him. So I should have just pushed with the Chariots in the middle and the Gore-Tax down the bottom and put more pressure on him. And I was I think too confident in the Giants stopping his imps from getting that objective up the top. Yeah, basically my Wildhorns just continue to run away from the Bloatflies at the top as well. What do we got here? Okay, so this is a little bit of a jump actually. So this is like my turn after his whole turn, where the Sirens have rallied and they moved around to chaff my Giant. His magic managed to kill my Giant, who had taken 5 wounds. I needed to stop both of the Hereditaries because I only had 2 wounds left, but I couldn't. Which is where it was actually pretty important that, like, if my Wildhorns had gotten into those imps, he would have had 1 less Hereditary to throw at me, so I could have stopped all my dice to stop the other one. And then I don't really think that he could have stopped me from getting in with his Sirens, because he would have had to, with the space that was there, he couldn't be, he had to be conga line and facing roughly the building. And to stop the other Giant getting into the imps, I think he would have had to basically be flat across there, which meant that my overrun would take me in there. Which I think, because I have 2 of them, probably would have, I think I would have been able to get both of them if he'd done that. So even though the Chariot's coming in to flank 1 Giant and almost certainly kill it, I think that I still would have been able to take the imps off with the other Giant because he's got 10 strength 5 and then a Thunder Stomp, assuming the imps don't kill him. So yeah, I mean, it would have been much better if I'd been able to kill those imps, but it didn't work out, and I think my plan there was probably a little bit cowardly anyway. This was actually the turn though that I decided to push my Chariots forward a bit, so that's why I used my Gargoyles to chaff, because I realised that that giant and the Imp's plan isn't going to work, so he's going to get that objective, and then I'll just be down 2 giants and probably my Wildhorns who are going to be fought by Bloatflies. Which means that, sure, we draw objective, I keep him up the middle, but I probably lose like 12-8. So I should have pushed earlier, but I decided, better late than never, so I moved up to try and deal with him. Yeah, so this is after... In my turn, the giant unfortunately won. He had 1 wound left, and he didn't die to the sirens. But he didn't kill them all either. I think I rolled fine, but Ivan just rolled really well for his ward saves. Like, I had 11 auto hits and didn't kill that unit, which was a little bit unlucky, but the alternative is that Chariot would have just come down and countercharged him and killed him when he overran into the... No, he couldn't overrun into the Imps. So, regardless, he was going to die. In the second turn, which is this, like the second round of combat, with the sirens, Ivan charged the Imps in, and I think... No, the siren guy killed him this time. The gargoyles facing the Chariot, basically, they were charged by the Chariot, but Ivan just placed him like there because he was figuring out like where he'd need to be if I charged to counter, and just left him there because it's like, I'm going to leave him in the position that I want him to be, and I'll move him back if you don't kill the gargoyles, but he killed them pretty easily. Yeah. So I guess basically how he's set up, if I charge his succubi with my chariots, I'm going to get countered by the bloatflies and the thrashing engine. Yeah, so that's just, the gargoyles did die. I think it's the only difference there. Oh, okay. So we don't have many pitches left, unfortunately. And a few things happened. So, my Wildhorns over on the left are just fighting bloatflies, and I think they ended up passing 2 Leadership 6 break tests, but they didn't get any points off the bloatflies, and they should have fled earlier, but they didn't, so it didn't really matter anyway. What I did in this turn, which was my turn 5, was I charged the chariots at his succubi, and I moved my Gortak up, basically on their right, so that the position of the Gortak, it's kind of hard to do without actually being able to see the positions, and I can't draw on this. So anyway, the chariots sort of had to be, because they're the equivalent of 4 wide to the succubi, so right in the middle of that unit. The Gortak comes along on their right, and then the bloatflies didn't have any room to charge the chariots because of the distance between the Gortak and his unit overhanging. They didn't have the space. I turned my Gortak in slightly as well, so that if he did charge the Gortak with them, he'd only be able to fight with the champion and 1 guy behind, rather than the full unit. So I think that was something that Ivan didn't plan for. I'm pretty sure he mentioned that after the game. He thought if I charged the succubi, he'd get that because he didn't realise that the Gortak could block it. But when my chariots went into his succubi, I don't know what I won by. I think I won by 13. He didn't do any wounds to me. I got good spells off. I foolishly didn't think about striking at his characters until it was until I got down to the mounts. And then I'd done 1 wound after my Beast Lord's mounts attacks, and then put my Beast Lord in, and he had Savage Fury up, and I managed to get 6 hits and did 6 wounds. But Ivan passed 5 out of 6 ward saves. So I guess it wouldn't have mattered if I'd put earlier attacks on him if he was passing saves like that. But given that he ended on 1, I was a little bit disappointed in myself for not thinking to just try and ping wounds off him as well, because then once he's lost the Evoc Wizard, even if his bloatflies charge my Gorgon, I'm not so worried about the magic because it's a breath weapon and -1 or -1. So I probably just stop the breath weapon and it's not too much of a concern otherwise. I also charged the Gortak down the bottom at his thrashing engine. It needed an 8, but he failed, and that takes him sort of turning a bit towards the building, so he was not going to do anything. After I did win that combat in the middle, Ivan failed his Leadership 8 rerollable, and it left him with both his characters and a banner left in the unit. which meant that I had to slide down. Well, I didn't have to slide down, but I reformed down so that the Bloatfly still couldn't flank charge me, but it meant that they got the full unit attacking my... I think they got 2 models, like 2 in contact, so 2 in the front, 2 in the back, attacking my Gortak. And his magic went off, and I think my Gortak was toughness 4. So he just killed that in the end. But then in the next round, I wiped out his Succubi unit in both characters, and even though his Threshing Engine charged in the flank, it didn't do any wounds because that was toughness 8, I think. I got Stone Skin up again at that point, so the Threshing Engine did hold me in place. But basically, after that happened and after Ivan saw how dangerous those chariots were, he didn't want to send anything else in because I managed to, with the Threshing Engine sort of... you'll have to use your imaginations to figure out where my positions were, but I was roughly sort of center of my unit where his banner icon is, and his Threshing Engine charged that it was only contacting my Druid at the back. So then when I reformed, because he had 1 wound left after that, I sort of got to shift down to the right with my combat reform, and then after I killed it in my turn, I was able to turn around, and the things that he sort of had threatening from both sides to maybe charge, I was able to keep all in the front. And it was sort of a decision where the likelihood was that if Ivan charged in on his turn 6, he'd probably just give me an extra point. So I was sitting at 13-7 win to me. If he charged things in, he was probably going to give me a 14-7, but he had a chance to kill the Druid to try and get it back to a 12-8. Or if I got really unlucky, break my unit, which I was really worried about, to be honest, because it shouldn't happen, but it's one of those things where he rolls well on his ward saves, I roll a bit poorly on my saves and my attacks, and it's like all of a sudden I'm losing by 1 or 2 when I don't get to reroll. But he decided not to put him in because the likelihood was basically just that I got an extra point if he did that, and it wasn't worth it. So end result, I was pretty happy with, because Ivan's a really good player. When he was on the Australian scene, he was one of our strongest players. I think if you tiered the Australian players, you'd have Bobo as a number 1 top, but then in the elite company just below Bobo, Ivan would definitely be that. He's played the Australian ETC team quite a bit, and these days he's with the Spanish guys, but he's a very tough opponent. I was very happy to get a win over him. He was saying that basically, and I agree with this, and I agreed with it at the time, I think what he should have done back after I pushed up here, he probably should have just pulled back and gone, that's fine, I'm going to draw the objective. I won't get greedy and try and win it. But I think it would have been a 12-8 win to him if he'd just pulled everything back and taken the fact that he's going to kill my Wildhorns and my 2 Giants, and I've only killed... I don't know what I'd killed at this point. I can't see anything that was on the board that would have been dead. Otherwise, I would have gotten half points for the Sirens. I don't know if I'm missing something, but I might have gotten no points, basically, if he just pulled back because I wasn't aggressive enough. But, as he said, he got kind of greedy and tried to go for that objective, which gave me the opportunity to go in and do what I should have been doing from turn 2 or turn 3, which is just pushing with those chariots and going like, you can't beat me. I'm taking you down because you can't hurt me with most of your army. Also, he noted that he should have just turned his Eidolons to face away from my lines, because there was no reason to face them towards me. So losing them turn 1 was really big, and Savage Fury is just such a fun spell to me when I'm able to get those little sort of trolly things off, where it's like, okay, I'm going to make your chaff charge me. You didn't think about this, but now it's worked out. I think it's the only time I've done it the entire tournament as well. But very happy with that on my turn 1. In the end, that took me to 60 points for the tournament, which is the best I've ever done at one of these international events. And we've been playing against the top teams because we've been up the top the whole time. So I'm very happy with how I've played in 4 out of 5 of my games. And I'm very happy with the list, actually. I think Some slight changes might be needed, but I'll be thinking about those, and I'll probably do like a review of the tournament, review of the list, and like next ideas in a video to come. This gave us a 13-7 lead in the round, and we've still got all 4 of our games to go. I think the next one is, I'm recording this at 6 p.m. on Thursday, so I think it's 6 a.m. it starts, so it's in about 12 hours. But we're in with the chance to win the tournament. So if things go well, and we're 1 point behind the leaders, so if things go well for us this round, and the tournament leaders are 1 point below us, I think there are other teams that could jump. So basically, if we manage to cap our opponents, and the tournament leaders don't cap their opponents, we have the tiebreaker, even if they are 1 point off a cap. So if we do well, we're in a pretty good place to win, which is shocking to me because I wasn't expecting it going into the event when I've played like 4 or 5 of these before and always been in the bottom half and more often than not like the bottom quarter. So yeah, pretty happy with it. I'll get back to you guys next time with a review video. I hope you enjoyed this one. And like, share, and subscribe. Apparently that matters to people actually doing it, I've heard. So get on board. I want to get YouTube famous, boys. Anyway, thanks for being around. I'll see you on the next one.